On to our next fireside chat. Let me call up the next contestants. We have David, I can't even see him. We have David Coronado, please come up. Dr. Calvin Mackey, please come up. Talia Milgram Elcott, please come up. And Dr. Gil Nome, please come to the stage. Remember, this is narrative session. We're going to share in 3 minutes. Each of you are going to share a story that represents your commitment and experience in the STEM ecosystem. Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course. How are you? Good to see you. Doc, come on in. Sorry. All right, we can go in any specific order. Who would like to volunteer to jump in the fray first? You know, I should have had a couch here for Dr. Mackey, right? It was like center stage. Let's go. Who wants to go first?
I just remember, I've been at the Lemelson Foundation for 10 years. And I remember walking in, they said, come to this thing. You know, in Oregon, we had our own STEM ecosystem was firing up, and I was actively in that area. And they said, come to this ecosystem thing. We got people working on stuff. And at this point in your life, you're kind of, a lot of people are talking about they're working on stuff, right? And they're actually focusing on people and connections. And so I remember walking in, and we spent two days, I forget where we were. We were like deep in these little columns, like a labyrinth down there. But we were really focused on bringing people together, really actually understanding the problems that were facing their communities and asking key questions of each other from different communities around, actually, how do we have collective impact? I was enthralled by the idea because for me, I believe people are the solution. They can be the problem too, but people are the solution. One of the best natural resources that our world has is brain power. And so when I saw the number of folks in that room collectively actually working together to try and solve this issue of how do we get, it's STEM education, but it was also quality education, period, for all children, no matter where they came from. So I was excited by it, and I'm proud of the communities that are around the country doing this hard work, and I'm proud of the work that we all did to kind of continue to provide a place, really, where each of you can continue to learn from one another and hopefully collectively have more impact, more than you can alone.
Love that, appreciate that. And a little fun fact, and we were talking about athletics yesterday, and you know, our friend David talked about, you know, he loves sports, but he said, I went to college in D1 as a mathlete. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Well done, sir. Well done, sir. Who wants to follow that? Dr. Nome, Talia?
Okay. Hard to follow, David. I think the magic of the ecosystems has always been the sense that none of us can do this thing alone, but there are all of the resources and assets that in our communities, that in our communities we have everything we need, but what we lack is the connective tissue. And so kids have these isolated experiences that don't all get woven together in a way that matters. But the ecosystems have this beautiful and clear fundamental insight that if we could stitch all of the pieces together and support communities to come together in an ecosystem, that kids could thrive. And that insight is it's no surprise that it was like catch a fire, that once someone you saw it, you were like, I want this for my community, I want this for my kids, for my teachers, for my parents. And it has spread in more than 40 states. This beautiful idea was this fundamental insight. It had perfect scale. The only thing, sometimes I think about it, like brains have, like our intellect is the greatest natural resource and it's almost unlimited. An idea has perfect scale. And this idea deserved to catch a fire, and ties made it happen so that more and more communities can learn from each other, stitch these pieces together so that more kids could thrive. It's beautiful to see and celebrate at 10 years.
I absolutely love that. I mean, we're having so many kind of bio-life science metaphors, but really, that all of the work you all do, that connective tissue, stitching folks and dreams together is just absolutely powerful. Thank you so much, Talia. Appreciate that. Dr. Nome.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us after a wonderful dinner. First, I want to thank TIES, the Ecosystem Network, all of you, really, and Jan. I mean, you've already been thanked many times, but for 10 extraordinary years of creativity, vision, and community, you've brought us together. And I was here kind of from the beginning, and I've had many discussions with Jan over the years. That actually in itself is my memorizing of the 10 years, because every conversation with Jan and her team leaves me kind of inspired, even at times kind of into like, what are we going to do next? A little confused, but always with clarity. One story that stands out in the collaboration is the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. Are you here? I know you're here somewhere. Okay, because they were kind of our first ecosystem that we worked with around the question of data and case studies. Together we learned what it means to grow as a system, to use data not just for accountability, and this is very important, but to tell a story of evolution and shared purpose. Thank you, Tulsa, for being kind of with us throughout. Kristen Lewis Warner, who's my comrade in arms here and who's also here tonight, collected the data and helped write the report. Michael Dupont, who many of you know of the Schusterman Family Foundation, and Levi Patrick, Xan Black. Xan, do you still remember her? She retired, but she was a force, a person of force. And Dr. Emily Mortimer, thank you for really getting us started. And that was at a time when we didn't yet have young people that we could assess, but it was really about coming together and finding out how the ecosystems work together. Since then, we have begun to work with many, many different ecosystems, and our view and vision is that we collectively should really understand what impact we make together. And to do that, we strongly believe in the idea of living data. Not accountability, did you do it? Did you kind of have a report that you can actually put somewhere in the corner and forget because the data comes back a year later? No, but a data that you can collect all the time that actually empowers young people, their families, and educators. And I think we've made a lot of progress in creating a whole new view of data that we hope that this initiative can be an example for many other ways in which data will be collected and is living and helps young people thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, many of you have won awards in the audience. Certainly our distinguished panelists have won many awards. But there's one gentleman, our final speaker, who has won the President's Award, the Presidential Award. So I just want to give it up to you, Dr. Mackey, for that accomplishment. The final words are yours, sir.
Thank you, Frederick. We started STEM NOLA over 13 years ago because my wife Tracy and I was in the kitchen. Our son Miles came home. He said he didn't like science anymore. And we said, why? He said, Mom, Dad, the teacher just talked to the board, and I want to do stuff with my hands. And I said, we have to fix that. And we got in the garage and we started doing all these hands-on activities. Our other son came in the garage, started doing hands-on activities. The kid next door came over. Before you know, we had 20 kids in the garage every Saturday doing hands-on activities. And we noticed the change in these kids. We noticed their posture change, their word usage change, their demeanor change. They started showing up, wanted to know when we were going to do something else. Our son came home one day and I said, son, what's your grades? He said, Dad, I got all A's. I said, that's my boy. That's what I expect of you. He said, Dad, my friends want to know how I know all this. I said, did you tell them you do this in the garage with your dad? He said, yeah, Dad, but my friends need this. And right then and there, my son realized that he was being exposed to somebody and things that his friends were not. And he believed in his heart of hearts, if his friends had the things that and the people that he were exposed to, they'll be just as bright as him. And Tracy and I realized right then and there that we was keeping our time and our talent and our treasure to our own when we had something that the world had to offer. Had to offer the world. We took 100,000 of our own dollars, and on December 14, 2013, we had our first event in the community in New Orleans, very underinvested community. We planned for 100 people, 350 kids and 150 parents showed up. And we realized then we was on to something. And for the next 12 years, we've engaged over 200,000 kids in 47 states and 5 countries. I say that, and I want to say thank you to Tracy for walking the path with me. I love you. And I want to say thank you to Greg Washington, the president of George Mason, who's here tonight, who we really owe a hand clap to for standing up in the way that he's standing up to people who's trying to destroy the work that we are doing on a daily basis. Greg, I appreciate you. I love you. I'm here tonight because of 2 people. My wife, Tracy, said, you're going to do something, and when she tells me to do something, I got to do it. And because of Greg Washington, a couple of years ago, I was here at the U.S. News and World Report Science Fair, and I saw these STEM ecosystem signs. I flew back to New Orleans, and he and Gerald Solomon came to New Orleans to have dinner with me, and Greg said, tell them what you do. And I told him, and Gerald was like, that's what we do. And Greg said, I told you you're doing what these people doing. And that's how I got into the ecosystem. He brought me to Newport News. They said, come to Newport, California. That's when I met Jan. And Jan been telling me what to do ever since then. But what the ecosystem did for me was it gave me a family and a tribe. It gave me like-minded people who I can bounce ideas off, and it let me know that I wasn't alone in the world trying to do this work. And I'm glad to be a part of a group of people committed to equity for all kids. We live in a nation that makes sure that every kid, and especially every boy, and especially every black and brown boy, touch a football or basketball before the age of 4, and no one says anything, before they get to school. We live in a nation that makes sure when these boys go to school, they have access to football and basketball, and no one says a thing. We make sure when these boys get out of school, you know what they have access to in their community? Football and basketball. At STEM NOLA, now STEM Global Action, we're committed to making sure every kid has access to STEM before the age of 4, before they go to school, before they see a schoolhouse, in the community in which they live. Every kid deserves that. And when we give that to every kid, we'll get the dynamics that we are seeing, because those kids wake up every day hoping and believing that one day they'll be one of the 250 that get drafted and become a millionaire. These kids wake up every day and hoping that they're going to be one of the 60 that get drafted into the NBA and become a millionaire. These same kids play play track, gymnastics, and golf, hoping and believing that one day they'll be the one that win a gold medal and become a millionaire. STEM Ecosystems is committed to making sure every kid have access to STEM, such that when they go to bed at night, they know that maybe 18, 19, 20 years from now, they'll be able to create something with their mind. And they'll wake up dreaming and hoping and believing that one day, 18 years later, they'll be one of the 14 million millionaires in the world, or one of the 3,250 billionaires in the world, creating an economy in their community for their people. That got to be our dream for all of our children. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are heating up. Keep giving a round of applause for the champions of STEM, David Coronado, Dr. Calvin Mackey, Talia Milgram Elcott, and Dr. Gil Nolan. Thank you all so much for those amazing words. Appreciate you all.